Chet and Nicole, I have minutes after 1. We still waiting on a couple people to start.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I don't think we have a quorum yet. Let me double check. Okay, we have a quorum now with Ms. Clark arriving.
Very good. Are we recording?
Yes, we are.
All right, very good. All right, welcome everybody. It's Monday, April 12th. This is the CVTA Technical Advisory Committee meeting for the month of April. I'm Todd, you're the chair, and we will start by covering the fact that we have a statement regarding virtual meetings is posted on the website. We do not need to read that statement. And we will now move to roll call and certification of a quorum. Nicole?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll start with Town of Ashland, Ms. Amos.
Here.
Charles City County, Ms. Russell. Chesterfield County, Ms. Smith. Ms. Walker. Goochland County, Mr. Coleman.
Here.
Mr. Kilduff. Hanover County, Mr. Vidunas. Mr. Flagg. Henrico County, Chair Yor.
Here.
Ms. Meidler.
Here.
New Kent County, Mr. Stouter.
Here.
Ms. Leduc. Powhatan County, Mr. Chardine.
Here.
Mr. Pompey. City of Richmond, Ms. Clark.
Here.
Mr. Bridewell. DRPT, Mr. Brule. Ms. Dubinsky.
Here.
VDOT, Mr. Mann.
Here.
Mr. Riblet.
Here.
GRTC Transit System, Ms. Torres. Ms. Del Ross.
Here.
I think it was Adrian. Thank you, Adrian. And hello, Mr. Ross. RMTA, Ms. Dean. And Plan RVA, Mr. Parsons.
Here.
Thank you. That concludes the roll call for attendance. And Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
And thank you, Nicole. And I see Joe Vidunas with Hanover has now joined. And looks like Barb Smith from Chesterfield is signing on.
Thank you.
All right, do we have any amendments to the agenda for this month, Chet?
No, sir, we don't.
All right, then next item would be the approval of the March 8th, 2021 CVTA TAC action meeting minutes. If everybody's had a chance to review, we'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, this is Diana. I move that we approve the March 8th CVTA TAC action meeting
Thank you.
minutes.
Do we have a second?
Barb Smith, second.
Thank you, Barb. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Minutes are approved. Next item is number 3, public comment period. Chet or Nicole, do we have anybody signed up to present comments?
No, sir, there were no requests to address the committee today.
All right, thank you. Next item is the CVTA TAC Chairman's Report. I have nothing to report other than we have a lot of CVTA meetings, subcommittee meetings, and everything else coming up for the balance of the month. So spring break is over. That's all I had. And next item is the CVTA TAC staff update. Chet, can I kick that off?
Sure, thanks. So the Finance Committee met on March 10th. And since that date, the full authority met. So a lot of the Finance Committee items, there was action by the authority. One of those was to schedule the public hearing for the CVTA administrative and operating expense budget. And that's the draft for FY 2022. So that public hearing will be at the April authority meeting on the 30th. And we are working to get that agenda complete now for the full authority meeting. The next item that the Finance Committee reviewed will be an update given by Mr. Gregory following my comments on the draft MOA with GRTC. The Finance Committee also talked about CVTA staffing and support services. And there were some updates given by Ms. Heater regarding our performance evaluation from FY21, as well as starting to think about an FY22 staffing plan and where the authority wants to go in regards to staffing support. One of the things that is happening at the April 30th authority meeting is we will have two speakers joining in to share their lessons learned and advice, and that is Monica Backman from NVTA, and also HR TAC will be on the call as well to talk about their, I think, very different approaches for staffing support for their authorities, and hopefully that will be helpful for the full authority. And again, that's going to be on April 30th. So that is a review of the Finance Committee meeting. Unless there are any questions, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Gregory quickly to talk specifically about the MOA with GRTC.
Yeah, actually, Barb Smith has her hand raised. Barb, do you have a question?
Oh, thanks.
This is probably more appropriate for the next item, but I was wondering when that draft MOA with GRTC is going to the full board.
Sure. Yeah, and I think Eric can address that, but we are awaiting some possible final comments from legal counsel, other legal counsel on that MOA before it's ready for full action.
Thanks.
Okay, unless there's any more questions on Chet's update, we're going to transition to Eric.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Todd. Thank you, Chet. Barb, just to try to address that question, we are heading towards approval or presentation with recommended approval by the full authority. Want to review it with you all, get any additional comments or input from you all. It's been circulated to your local legal counsel, and so we don't believe we're going to get any further comment from them, except we are awaiting some last minute comments from GRTC's legal counsel, Bonnie Ashley, who's in the City of Richmond City Attorney's Office. So she's already had one go at it, and her comments and the suggested revisions are incorporated into the draft. It's in your agenda packet and before you right now. So they were good comments. So we went ahead and incorporated that. That's what this version right now that you're looking at is what we're calling version 8. And again, that incorporates GRTC's latest legal counsel's comments. We can run through those. This is a clean version. It does not show the track changes, but those track changes I'll address right now just to explain in case you want to compare and contrast the last version with this one. The first one is in section 5 on page 3. We can scroll down to that. It just, the change would eliminated the first clause in that sentence. So it just streamlined that provision and refers to the 15% funds. Just rearranges that comment. So that's non-substantive. The next change was on the following page, section 8E. And again, that it just streamlines how that process is going to work, about the deficiencies in the reporting and sort of the remedial measures that can be taken, and including mediation, and how that's going to work. So that's positive change. I believe all these changes are very positive and friendly to both parties. So I had no argument with them, and went ahead and incorporated them. One a little bit further up on that page, one item I wanted to point out to you, as we've been saying from the very beginning, this MOA is going to serve as a template for the MOAs that we're going to craft for each of the jurisdictions. And we're going to have as much continuity and similarity between these agreements as possible. We want them to be as uniform as possible. One difference in between the MOA and the reporting requirements between the GRTC MOA that you have before you and the one that we'll have with the local jurisdictions is on the annual certification reporting deadline in 8B right there in front of you. And it sets forth that the deadline is December 1st of each year for GRTC to submit its annual report. That's different than the annual reporting deadline for the localities. Annual reporting deadline for the localities is August 1st of each year. And of course, all of the GRTC and the local jurisdictions are expected to submit quarterly reports on their expenditures of the of the funds regularly, but the annual reporting requirement date or deadline is a little different there. That tracks those different deadlines track the financial policies and procedures, which were formulated through the Finance Committee with the Finance Work Group. And I believe you all had seen that, and that was approved on February 26th, ultimately. So that document should be able to put your hands on that pretty easily if you have any questions. But those deadlines track that policy. On the following page, 5 of 8, right there at the top, subsection B. Again, that's a change from the, let's see, 10B. Page 5 of 8. That should be section, I'm sorry, 9B. 9B, if you could scroll up a little bit, please. There it is. So that talks about the transportation plan and just appropriately notes that GRTC will collaborate with the TPOs, with a TPO work group, and can get help from consultants in the preparation of that report. So that's perfectly fine. Let's see, if you scroll down a little bit further to subsection D. So that again, 10D, I'm sorry. That again talks about the remedial measures that can be taken if GRTC fails to meet its requirements in compliance with the statutory requirements. And paragraph 11 talks about restitution. So if any funds are misspent or misappropriated, GRTC is expected to make restitution to the CVTA for any misdirected funds. And then paragraph 16, just we added a provision about the governing law to be interpreted and constructed and consistent with Virginia law naturally. So that is it. As Chet mentioned, I believe we might get some more last minute changes from GRTC legal counsel. That's the last I heard about a week and a half ago. So we'll see where they are going forward. I don't expect too much more, if anything, but I'll touch base with them and you all will be apprised of that. I'm happy to try to answer any questions if I can.
Questions for Eric? See none. Thank you, Eric. That's helpful.
Yes, sir. And just to this will be going back once we get it GRTC and everybody on the same page. This will be going back through the finance committee and then for recommended approval to the full authority. I believe that's where we are with that, Chet, if you want to correct me, I think that's right.
Yes, I believe that's right.
Thank you.
So will that be on the finance committee agenda for next week or?
Hoping so. If we can get that, any last minute comments from GRTC, we'll incorporate those if they're okay, and then tee it up for the finance committee next week.
Very good, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Next item 6, regional project prioritization update. And I believe Joe, as vice chair of that subcommittee, you're going to provide that update.
Yes. So Chessa is out of town this week and asked me to give you all a brief update. I'll do my best. I think some of you, or many of you, may be on the CVTA Regional Authorization Committee. This committee has met several times now with the primary objective of developing a prioritization process for the assignment of the 35% regional CVTA share. So we have been busy meeting and discussing various things. So far, we have kind of gotten through or close to getting through the eligibility criteria. Kind of use Sulov's words, defining what the universe of projects that we would consider. We've broken things down into 5 categories of projects: highway, bridge, bike ped, rail, intermodal, and transit. And in terms of highway bridge, I think what we're looking at right now are your interstates and your limited access, principal arterials and collectors, looking at an ADT threshold that we haven't identified yet. I think we're looking at 20,000 and 30,000 ADT, and we'll have some maps to look at to show what those networks look like at those various thresholds. Bike ped, essentially limited to regional trail type projects. Fall Line Trail is an example. East Coast Greenway is another example. Rail, essentially looking at matching funds, I believe, I have that right. But not for use for capital or operating. Intermodal, park and rides, port projects, and transit. Somebody help me out here. I can't recall if we landed. There was some discussion. There was a great deal of discussion about whether or not transit should be eligible, given that there's a 15% share of CVTA funding going to transit. And I think that's still an open question at this point. Once we get through this process, we'll then be looking at the really fun process of prioritization. And unlike, one of the things that SmartScale has been, or people have been critical about SmartScale is that it really tries to normalize everything and make the same, use the same criteria for different category types of projects, trying to score and rank bike ped projects in the same grouping with highway projects, for example. And we feel that just doesn't work well, and are leaning towards an approach that would look at ranking and prioritizing within each of the 5 categories that I just described. And then from there, we would rank and order those projects, and then you would make selections based upon the ranking in those particular categories. So that's what we'll be working on next. The goal is to present some form of a recommendation to the Finance Committee and the TAC Committee of CVTA sometime in May. And then with a recommendation, a final recommendation going to the full authority for June, hopefully to have something in place and adopted so that we can then begin the process of scoring, ranking, and selecting projects in the upcoming fiscal year. So I hope I didn't mess that up too bad, and I'll do my best to take any questions, or if anybody wants to feels like to correct something I said, please feel free.
Chet, you're raising your hand.
I think you did a great job, Joe. The one thing I would add is that the committee hasn't yet really talked about it, but one of the things on the agenda for future meetings is to talk about leveraging and how we can use the regional funding to leverage additional pots of money in other places.
Oh yeah, there's one more thing. So if you join in, we gave a homework assignment to everybody to submit their top 3 regional projects. Irrespective, don't think about eligibility criteria, don't think about where the project's located. Just wanted to see what was kind of on the top of everybody's minds in terms of what they consider to be the 3 most important projects for our region. And this is non-binding. It was just simply an exercise. So that will be fun. I've seen some of them.
Thank you, Joe. Any other questions, comments? And I think the next subcommittee meeting is scheduled for this Friday, the 16th.
Yes.
Okay. Very good. Thanks, Joe. Next item, certification reporting for FY 2022. Chet.
Yes, thank you. At this point, items 7A and 7B are really just updates and reminders. We plan on having agenda items for this committee next month in terms of updating spending plan, reporting process. At this point, we haven't really heard many concerns with the way that we did it for FY21. So at this point, I think staff is moving forward with the assumption that we'll use the same type of format where everybody basically gets the template spreadsheet with different categories and drop downs and is able to include the different types of projects. We did learn, as you all know, through the FY21 process that there's many different ways to spend funds on transportation, whether it's specific projects or programs or annual expenses or one-time expenses. So we'll make sure to provide the flexibility in the reporting tool to make sure everybody can include the types of projects that they need to include. The other item before, I'd be happy to take any comments on that. Item 7B was, we had talked about providing the opportunities for quarterly updates to the spending plan. So at this point next month, if any of you have updates to what you've submitted and has been approved for FY21, please get those to me so that we can make the changes in the already accepted / adopted spending plan, and we can make that update and bring it back for the agenda next month. The last item, annual reporting requirements. This would be something that Eric was going to cover. But before we get there, are there any concerns or comments, especially about 7A, that we should be aware of?
Like we're all good, Chet.
Okay. Eric, do you want to give an update on the end of year annual reporting requirements?
Sure. Yes, sir. So as you all know, the CVTA statute requires that the recipients of funds, the localities and GRTC, are to provide sufficient documentation as required by the authority showing that the revenues distributed under subdivision D3 were used for the purposes set forth therein. So what we were thinking is, in addition to the quarterly and annual reporting, you need to have some sort of certification instrument whereby the recipient of the funds, a locality or GRTC, certifies that they complied with the code and that the requirements and spent the money appropriately, consistent with approved projects and consistent with the quarterly and then their annual reporting that they're submitting. So this is just to complement that process and that procedure. And the thinking was that this doesn't need to be extraordinarily complicated or some kind of multi-page process. It just needs to be an instrument whereby the locality can certify that they spent the proceeds or the receipts, the funds that they received, consistent with statutory requirements, consistent with their quarterly and annual reporting. So that there's some accountability, obviously. So that's what the purpose of this instrument, this draft instrument before you. This is a first draft. It's been shared with you all for your input and for your awareness, and also it's been distributed to your local legal counsel, so they've seen it, and also legal counsel for GRTC. And I'm happy to take any input from anyone on this. I would certainly like to keep it as streamlined as possible. There's no reason to overcomplicate it. It just basically you just want to set forth what the expectation is in the statute, what they're saying they did, and then an opportunity to sign it. Whether it needs to be signed by the chief administrative officer or the chief elected officer, that's a decision I think that can be made either by the authority if they want to stipulate who they expect to sign it, or that's a decision that can be made by the jurisdiction or the or GRTC, whether they want the chairman of their board or their CEO to sign it. So there it is. Again, it's a draft, and happy to take any input or ask or answer any questions if I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Any questions? All right, seeing none. That's everything we need to cover under that item. So next would be regional public transportation plan progress report.
Mr. Chairman, if I might just if anybody if I might just step in one last.
Yes.
If anybody has any comments, shoot them to me by email if you like, or feel free to call or confer with your local legal counsel, and they can send those questions or comments to me or get them to me however you like. I see there's a question. Eric, could you please? Yes, Nora, I will send you the draft certification form. It's in the meeting packet there at the end. If you want to scroll down in your agenda packet, you should see that tacked on there at the very end. Yep, on page 18 of 18 in the PDF. Or page 16 of the agenda packet. So you might want to check that, and then if you still need it, just let me know.
Thank you, Eric. You said this did go to all the local legal councils.
It did.
How long ago, approximately?
It sent it out, I believe, April 2nd, so before spring break.
Okay, very good.
Right.
All right, so no other questions or comments on the certification reporting. Next item is the Regional Public Transportation Plan Progress Report. Adrian, you're going to provide that.
Yes, good afternoon. Just a quick update on the progress we've made in the Regional Public Transportation Plan. We had, I think since this last meeting, we had our core design where we all met back together to discuss expansion, and that was talking about the ridership first coverage after we did a couple of weeks of outreach. And the outcome of that core design is we kind of come up with a recommended expansion priority list from all of the jurisdictions. And with that, looking at the ridership coverage percent breakdown that we had been going over and what that meant, it ended up being kind of an 85-15 split with the expansion priorities. We took that to a special board meeting and reviewed and kind of made those recommendations just of the expansion priorities. And they also agreed to kind of an 85-15 split based on more towards ridership once we did have the resources and available funding over the years for that expansion. So what we've done as far as next steps is kind of to go through, we met with the working group, listed out the full list, and now we've just gone through and discussed if we did have the resources and timing wise, what each of the jurisdictions would prioritize over the next few years from that full list, knowing that operators are a variable there, a number of them, vehicles, and of course the biggest one when we have the available funding. So now we're actually starting the drafting of the plan with that sort of incorporation. We have in there also came out of the core design group, making sure we're setting aside funds more on the capital level to look at other sort of mobility needs, whether it's microtransit, things where fixed route service may not be the exact service needed. And this is something that could work out more for the rural jurisdictions and even some of our fixed routes today that might do a little bit better with a different model than fixed route. And again, that's maybe a microtransit or some sort of other service that we will look at over the next year with a wider kind of study. So that's being listed out now. Also looking at some other kind of micro mobility services that can be listed in the plan to be reviewed. So those will all come out in the draft. And of course, the priority one in the draft also is just making sure that our current operations, of course, stay whole. So kind of that maintenance of effort or maintenance of service will be something that will, of course, continue as priority one in FY22. Some of you have already met with, I know I've met with some of the bigger jurisdictions, I think a couple of the rules, but you'll be hearing from me. I'm going to be reaching out to everyone to make sure we have opportunity to kind of go over what GRTC services we have now and things that we can incorporate more even on the rural level in the plan, start those conversations. With that, we had originally planned to go to the full authority in May. Now we're going to do probably a little bit more outreach. So with that, we're pushing that back to probably June. Any questions?
Thank you, Adrienne. Any other questions, comments? All right. Next item is the Transit Service Governance Report progress. Chet, you're going to provide that.
Yes, thank you. So the Transit Service Governance Subcommittee met last week, and actually not last week, the week before last, and received an actually, no, it was last week. Boy. Received an update from the AECOM team regarding progress on the governance report. There were a number of data points that needed some expansion or update, and they provided a fairly comprehensive slideshow of some of the data and local information that was fine-tuned since the last time that they shared information. This presentation is actually posted on our website for the Transit Service Governance Committee. So if you wanted to take a look at that after the fact, that it is there for your review. It really looked at ridership by jurisdiction, service in revenue miles by jurisdiction, some of the board and organizational structure that currently exists at GRTC. That was expanded over the previous information that was shared by the consultant. And then talked about funding in terms of operations funding, local contributions, and some of the overall, just baseline understanding of how everything functions today. The next, I guess, more expanded part of the meeting was dealing with the peer review. And that is something that is underway now. Interviews with peer agencies, and to get an understanding of 4 different types of data. First is service area demographics. Second would be agency size. Third, operating characteristics. And fourth, the governance structure and funding itself. So the peer agencies that were selected based on professional understanding, knowledge of the industry, and some other factors were Hampton Roads Transit, Via Metropolitan Transit, Via Metro in San Antonio, Nashville MTA in Nashville, Tennessee, Indigo, the Indianapolis Public Transportation Corporation in Indianapolis, Indiana, and then Rock Region Metropolitan Transit Authority in Little Rock, Arkansas. So kind of the basic understanding of how each of these organizations operates was shared, with service area demographics, operating characteristics, funding breakdowns, and then more of a background for each agency and organization with, fast facts, board details, how the voting takes place, what the committees look like, and the organizational chart for each organization, as well as, that's about it. So that's still underway in terms of the interviews and the understanding. They made it through Hampton Roads, Via Metro, and MTA in Nashville at the last meeting, and we'll continue getting more information as they move forward. And then the last thing that they updated at the meeting was a regional stakeholder outreach and what that effort has looked like. So far, there have been 37 interviews, or 37 representatives, 12 stakeholder groups, and 16 total interviews for all of the stakeholders in our region, with one additional interview planned with DRPT, and I believe that is this week, the end of this week. So after that, they'll conclude the peer reviews and then start working on the strategic assessment and benchmarking of CVTA, as we set out in the scope. Evaluation of the usefulness and utility of a transportation district, and then finally options for potential governance strategies to incorporate. And everything will be incorporated into the final report for the Governor General Assembly. And the plan is still to have that completed by June 30th of 2021. So that everything can be submitted on time, and there will be opportunity for review and comment. That's the summary. There are a number of other folks that are also serving on the Service Governance Committee. If anybody has anything to add or any questions, please feel free.
Thank you, Chet. Any questions? Nicole was kind enough to put the link to the presentation from last Friday's subcommittee meeting in the chat box. It's also available on the CVTA website. So thank you for that. All right, seeing no questions, that moves us into, oh, actually I do have a question, Chet. What, are we still on the schedule for this report to be wrapped up late May, early June, to go to the full CVTA and meet the revised date of commitment to the governor's office of July 1?
Yes, sir. That is the plan.
Okay. Is this going to be something that is adopted by the full CVTA, or is it going to be informational, or how's that going to work?
I think our approach was that it would be adopted.
Okay.
We'll probably provide an update shortly in terms of time frame and being able to get it out for review and questions by authority members as well as TAC.
Yeah, that's kind of the math I'm doing in my head, is the timeline for review by all parties.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Next item is 10 CVTA TAC member comments. Does anybody have any comments for the group? All right, seeing none, our next meeting is scheduled for May 10th. It'll be virtual again. The next full CVTA meeting is April 30th. That's also going to be 100% virtual at the request of the chair. And as of now, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chet, we're looking to have a in-person option with virtual availability for the full CVTA meeting in the month of May, and VDOT has agreed to host at the new district headquarters.
That's correct. That's where we are right now.
All right, well, stay tuned. That's I guess good news. So if there's no other questions, comments, anything of interest, we are in a position to adjourn. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.